Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing The Lens. That's L-E-N-S. This is a book by Daugherty. And what this book is about is raising a champion athlete in today's myopic world. And if you're not familiar with the term myopic, that means short-sighted or narrow-minded. This is chapter 7 that we're discussing, hidden talent number 3, and that's overcoming adversity. I have my co-host Leland Johnson on the show today, so you'll also be hearing from him. Once again, this episode is brought to you by Millennium Edge Apparel. This is the place you want to go to for high quality workout clothing. Conditioning your body, be it for sports or for improving your overall health, we know is no walk in the park. Make sure you fully equip yourself with the best sports gear and workout clothing. Turn to Millennium Edge Apparel. This is a company based in San Leandro, California. They offer an extensive selection of high quality, comfortable workout gear that is made in the USA. From basketball jerseys and golf apparel to hoodies and socks, Millennium Edge Apparel has you covered. To see their products and learn more, visit millenniumedgeapparel.com. And now, welcome to today's episode. What's up, everybody? I hope all is well. If you haven't had a chance, go back and listen to episode 113, What is the Superstar? And also listen to a recent episode 114, What is Fear? I've been talking about what is the superstar, where we discuss the spirit, the soul, and the meaning of the star from an astrological standpoint, and how you can relate that to your personal life. And what is fear? We all go through it. We all have to figure out a way to define it. And then we all have to keep moving forward. And oftentimes, once we get to the other side, we realize it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Now, some of the things we're going to discuss today is definitely related to those episodes, because today we're going to be discussing the book. So this is for all of you book club members or my future book club members. We're going to be discussing this book called The Lens, L-E-N-S. And essentially, Daugherty, who's the author, he's discussing raising a champion athlete and man in today's myopic world. So if you're a sports parent, don't let this be exclusive to the female athlete. And he was, and if you have to go back and find that episode, it's in the archive. But Travis was 100%, adamant about saying that he wasn't speaking exclusively to males, that he often speaks to sports parents that have female student athletes. But today, in chapter number 7, he's discussing hidden talent number 3, which is overcoming adversity. So in this chapter 7, overcoming adversity, there's a passage in there that I'm going to read and we're going to discuss. And it says, he's speaking on adversity, and he goes on to say, it will separate him as much from his peers and competitors as any other talent he possesses. And he's discussing the ability to overcome adversity. And he says, and like any other hidden talent, the ability to overcome adversity can be taught, developed, and cultivated in your boy. And for the sake of this conversation, student athlete. Again, he said the ability to overcome adversity can be taught, developed, and cultivated in your student athlete. Now, my interpretation of that is these are from my personal experiences as a high school football coach, a 7-on-7 coach, a strength coach, a sprints coach, is that I found in my practice, and there's been several occasions over the last 10 plus years where you have individuals, either they don't want to or they don't know how to overcome adversity. And often the symptoms of that is they just tune out emotionally, and then they tune out physically, where they stop training, they stop their skills training, they stop taking practice seriously, they check out, or they really quit the team, and they might go to another team and quit that team. Now, I know, Leland, you've had some experiences working with athletes, overcoming adversity. And before we go further, I want to say, and Travis is talking about this in the book, he's speaking exclusively to the sports parent. And sometimes, as Leland would say, parents can aid and abet in certain behaviors. So, Leland, what's some of your thoughts on how we could better help the sports parent to help their student athlete overcome situations or scenarios when they're facing adversity?
Just try your best to take emotion, take your personal feelings and your personal emotions out of the situation first of all. I hate to sound because we're listening to it. We're actually into a piece on Robert Greene. It's gonna sound like I'm just repeating stuff that he said that we've already listened to just recently. But you just have to have a rational mind, and I just found, like me and you we always have conversations, and I told you through making my mistakes and learning and just being in the mix for a while, I naturally do certain things that other parents don't do. I view things in a rational way that other parents don't view it in, because just like you, I've coached also. So I've had the fortunate experience of being a coach and listening to parents complain, and I've also had the fortunate chance of being a parent. And my kid is on a college setting, and I would want to say something, and I have to say something, but the better thing is not to say anything sometimes, and just sit back, look at the situation with a rational mind, and I guarantee you, if you do that, then you'll make the right decisions.
Now, one thing I want to ask you, I know you're explaining to us to help a student athlete, overcome adversity. What the sports parent can do is have a rational mind. Give me an example of that as an illustration or a scenario or circumstance.
Okay. Just recently, I get a phone call after my man's first practice, my son's first practice game, and they lost to UW. Well, no, it was the second one. Sorry, it was the one they won against San Francisco State, and he started, and I felt like he did a pretty good job. He's just getting to know his guys, and he called me and he said, "Dad." I said, "What?" I said, "How do you feel about the game?" So he started to get all emotional, his voices started quivering. He said, "Man, I'm not being allowed to play my game." I said, wait. I said, "Hold on, stop." I said, "Stop." I said, "What's going on, man?" I said, "From what I'm hearing, when I look at the stats, you got to the line 4 times. So, but he's telling me I can't put the ball on the floor." I said, "You sure he's telling you that?" "Yeah, he's telling me to stop putting the ball on the floor." And I said, "But you got the ball stolen once. What happened in that situation?" "Oh, well, he just brushed over that." So he also statistically went probably, I think, 1 for 3 on shooting. So he says, all he wants me to do is just sit there and shoot. I said, "Look, bro," I said, "let me just say this. Is that a difficult task he's asking you to do?" He said, "What?" I said, "You took 3 shots. You should have went 2 for 3. That should have been the worst he should have done. But if you got 3 shots, guess what? If you're a professional and you practice the way a professional practices, you should be able to hit 3 shots when called on, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, why don't you practice on hitting those 3 shots?" And I said, "And I think you're reading into the not dribbling stuff. I think you're reading in that too much." And lo and behold, he goes back to the coach, because I've always taught him to have a great relationship with your coach, so where you can walk in his office and talk to him. He goes to talk to him, and guess what? He didn't tell him not to dribble the ball. He told him on the one mistake that he made when the ball got stolen, you dribbled it too deep. And basically his comments were, "You dribble it too much." And he was talking about that situation. Jazz put that on the whole situation. You see what I'm saying? So then he called me back. "Yeah, he didn't say that. He just said that when I dribbled that side." I said, "I told you." I said, "See, you're conjuring up things in your mind that you don't even need to. What you need to do is go in there and play, do your job, and make sure you do it with energy. Make sure that you bring the one part of your game that those other guys who are not starting, bring that part. So you know what that is? Yes, defense. Okay, we'll bring that. And keep playing your game and hit those 3 shots.
I like what you're saying about having a rational mind, because the first thing you have to do is remove your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You must remove your emotions as a sports parent and help your kid or your student athlete remove their emotions to look at the situation objectively. And then the biggest thing that I liked about what you said, Leland, was going to have a conversation with the coach, and how you're adamant about, your son having his own relationship with the coach and looking to build that, and being assertive and I guess you could say forward thinking about that, if that's the right word, because I think we live in days and times where our kids can be just expected to come, practice, play, and shut up, and I can appreciate a coach that's going to welcome an athlete to come into his office, remove his emotions, and then speak objectively in terms of, coach, how can I get better? And then the athlete can sit there and then take the input from the coach or take the feedback.
But let's be honest though. You have to present yourself in that way, because you got athletes that misconstrue what we are saying as far as developing a relationship, and in their mind, a relationship with the coach is every time if something's not going their way, or if something, what I'm saying, coach, why didn't I get to play? Or coach, what did I do today to not play? Or coach, what did I? You understand where I'm coming from? Because some guys can misconstrue that. But if you're that, he's going to want to have that relationship with you. If you're that type of guy, hey coach, how you doing? How's your day going? How's the family? When you break the ice like that, he starts to see you as a human being. He don't see you as just one of his players. You know what I'm saying? And that's one thing I told Jazz a long time ago. I said, do some things that they're not expecting you to do. When you see him, ask him, hey man, how you doing? How's the family? And that'll get them every time, especially coming from a player. You know what I'm saying? That'll get them every time, because coaches don't get asked that question. Nobody cares about what their family's going through. You know what I'm saying? And he's stressing. There was a situation with Jazz at UOP where everybody was wanting me to have an attitude with Coach Reb because things wasn't going Jazz's way. But one day, I think God was inside of me, and a spirit, I was just riding that spirit, and that spirit was telling me, you know what, man? The other day when you went to a game, dude he was coaching your son, and they set his replacement right across away from him. The guy that was going to take his job was sitting right directly across the way on the other side of the arena. And I said to myself, if that was happening to me, I'd probably be stressing every kid on that team out. I'd probably be a damn tyrant. So I made it known to one of the other coaches that I was really cool with. I say, hey man, tell Rev, I'm with him 100%. I understand what he's going through. It's a difficult situation when people's talking over your job and you got a family support. So I said, man, we riding. So it is what it is. Boom. And I think even that dialect that I had with him, I think that even made him take a step back and kind of freeze up on Jazz, because then Jazz played well at that point. And in a bigger sense, when Jazz was transferring, he was the biggest support to help Jazz get his name out there and really advocate for him, the type of player that he was. So, those things can come in handy, or those things you have to think about happening in the future also when you have these relationships with these different coaches that you deal with.
Coach Daugherty, in his book, again, we're discussing the lens, and the subtitle is Raising a Champion Athlete and Man in Today's Myopic World. And if you're not familiar with myopic, it means narrow-minded or short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another passage in here where he has a concept or a phrase that he calls a loop dad, like Loupe.
Yeah.
And he said concerning adversity, a loop dad works hard to avoid hardship for his student athlete because hardship equals failure. He'll go to great lengths to protect him from it. That way his boy can have success. That way his boy can be a success. So when you hear something like that, Leland, a loop dad, and it's kind of like you're working hard to avoid failure, and you look at failure as hardship, what's some of the first things that come to your head when I quote this?
I'll put it out there. I got a partner out there that has a son.
You don't have to say any names. Let's protect the guilty.
Okay, all right. I'll do it like this. He has a son that's playing over in probably considered the top high school program in the state. His son is a tall kid. The dad tries to avoid any adverse situation for his son at all turns, and has even taken the length to hold his son back to consider him the nation's best eighth grade kid. Damn, that's a hell of a imaginary trophy to shoot for. But
wait a minute. So let me put this in perspective for our audience. So you're telling me that it's fall right now, and the guy that you're talking about that's in question, him and his son, I know exactly who you're talking about. He happens to be from Oakland too. But you're telling me it's fall right now. His son should actually be in high school as a ninth grader, and you're telling me he's an eighth grader right now because his dad held him back
so he can be considered the best eighth grader in the nation.
So from your experience, what does that mean?
That's a parent asking for attention, looking for attention, because it's not the best move for his kid. His kid for sure. You've seen the kid before. The kid should be working on substantial things. The kid should be working on his body. Trying to prepare his body to be the strongest and the most durable it could be. And prepare for the rigors of high school and AAU basketball. You know what I'm saying? Again, you've seen the kid. You know what he should be doing. But you have parents out here that are just chasing for the wrong thing. They are the wrong representation for their kid on how to maneuver in the sports world. Every parent feels like when they get into this, that they're going to be in this for a long time, and they don't realize that you got a short, like 5-6 year span in this, and then they're moving on to the next generation of kid. Because they really don't care about your kid as a youth. In college recruiting, they don't even recruit you if you're not playing 17 and unders. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're a really good 16-year-old, you should be playing 17 and unders. They're not coming to watch a really good 16-year-old play against other 16-year-olds. They want to see that good 16-year-old play against older kids. So they don't start looking at your kid until he's 17. But you got parents acting fools, just crazy, carrying on with crazy antics in youth sports, and they don't realize that nobody is even concerned about your kid on that level. It's not until your kid becomes a quote unquote elite high school player and on the 17-year-old level that they have any concerns. Football is a little different. They start noticing your athleticism soon as you can crack a high school varsity squad and you can start producing. That's when they look at you as, oh, he's a player. Any school will be willing to gamble on you if you are productive on the high school level for any high school varsity team. I've seen it done all over the country.
I wanted to move on to the next passage. I really feel like this is good information. I really appreciate Coach Daugherty coming on. I'll try to find that episode, as we go on to share with y'all, the audience. But he has another passage in here where he says, there will be opportunities to use events or experiences in your son's life to help him develop this skill as he grows up. Each of these opportunities you take advantage of, each time you help him develop the resilience and grit required to overcome adversity, you are making a deposit into his account. So what would you say to the sports parent, Leland, and the young athlete listening to this on how do they need to go about developing resilience and grit? What does that mean to you?
Resilience and grit is, if I could explain it, the resilience and grit is that day when you got a hard day in school, you got a boatload of homework, you're trying to figure out, I got to get this done later on. Then you realize I got practice, but you realize that you just had practice the day before and you're sore and you really don't want to go, but you got to be there. And you find some way not only to go to practice, but go to practice and give every fucking thing you got, knowing that you got homework to do that night, later on that night, knowing that you got studying to do later on that night. Think of that situation happening 4 to 5 times a week. And if mentally you can see yourself persevering through that situation, then that's how you form grit. That's how you form work ethic. And that's how you form that ability to just to work yourself through adverse situations. It doesn't have to necessarily be an athletic endeavor that you're performing to learn this. It can be learned in other scenarios also.
I think really what's important about what you're saying is for the sports parent and the student athlete, one, they have to be on the same page, meaning their vision and purpose together must be clear. Because just like you were talking about, Leland, the last couple of weeks, we've been in like weeks 8 and 9 of high school football. Tonight, when we're recording, it's a Friday, the playoffs start. And I think a lot of y'all know out there that I have a sports mastery mastermind group where we connect purposely on Thursday nights, Pacific Standard Time from 8:30, to about 9:15 on the West Coast with those particular athletes. And they have practices. It's late in the season. They're still lifting. They're dealing with aches and pains. They have homework. The end of the first quarter is coming to a close, but they still make the group in the meeting at 8:30. And I like for my kids to admit, I'm tired. I really didn't feel like being here. At the end of the day, that's the truth.
Yep.
But the truth is, when you have a vision and your purpose is clear, you're going to be there through thick or thin. So I can really appreciate what you're saying as far as having resilience and grit. And that's what it takes to make it happen on that SAT. That's what it takes to happen on that ACT. And then, let alone going to do your thing on the field. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the parent to work through together. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the coach to work through together. It was created in a sense and in a way to bridge the gap in communication between these parties and build a successful relationship dynamic. To learn more, visit sportsmastery.com/workbook or check out the show notes page and click on the link. And now back to the show. I wanted to get into the next part. And he says it again right here. For the Lynn's dad, his vision and purpose are clear. He is determined to use today to help his son reach his full potential as an athlete and eventually as a man. When it comes to adversity in the life of his son, he knows where the value is in it. He's committed to finding the value and using it. He understands that the ability to overcome adversity is only created through experiencing adversity and learning how to handle it. one thing I liked about what he said, Leland, was, you got to be committed to finding the value and using that adversity to your advantage. I know you've had situations with your son and other athletes, like he might not be playing, or he might have a bad day, or tripping off the coach, and you'll tell him, I know you've explained that story about, do you have that $1 million facility to use?
Right.
Do you have practice dummies? I know that's one of your terms. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah. We were in a situation where he, again, that was at UOP, and he was going through the funk, man, just what kids go through. They feel like, or even better, let's talk about Coyote. Recently, I think he's starting to feel like the coaching staff is moving away from him and moving towards another area. But injuries and other things are bringing it to where they have to deal with him. And he was getting caught up in, oh man, they chose this dude first. I said, well, that dude ain't playing. You're playing right now. So it's not important. You can spend your mentality and your time thinking about, well, shit, they chose him over me. And if he was here, he would be playing and I wouldn't be playing. You wasting your time with that when you should be thinking about the scheme. You should be thinking about your duty that you have to carry out on the field. Because if you put your mentality towards that, you may play yourself into a situation where they say, you know what, my bad, I was wrong. So, you could take that stance of once they make a decision, that's how it's going to be. Or you can take the stance that once they make a decision, okay, you chose that person. Well, I think you made the wrong choice, and I'm gonna show you why you made the wrong choice. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I told him, go into practice, and I want you to practice like that. And before you know it, just the last game they played was against Air Force. Last couple of years in a row, they lost to Air Force, and it's a big thing for them to go to Air Force and play them on their home field. Well, he was a part of that win. He was a major part of that win. Play major reps. You know what I'm saying? So that mentality that when he called me, hey man, let that go. Don't work. Don't think. It worked. It because he could have been spending that time really bitching about the fact that they didn't choose him, or that he wasn't the next up on the totem pole. You know what I'm saying? Football is a physical game, and I always tell my kids, or I ask kids today, I say, you know who Wally Pipp is? And they go, nah. I go, I know. I say, Joe DiMaggio is? I heard of him. Yeah, well, I think Wally Pipp was the dude that was playing in front of Joe DiMaggio, and then he got hurt. And then Joe DiMaggio got his chance, and guess what? You never saw Wally Pipp again. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you have. That's your mentality has to be that of one where you can't let the coach determine who you are or what you are as a player. Athletes need to know. Coaches see you and they have their identity of who you are as a player. They may not know that you can do other things. So what you got to do is see who they see you are as a player, be that, but while you're that, make sure you have enough confidence to show that, hey, coach, I can only not do layups, but I can shoot threes. Oh, not only can I shoot threes, but coach, I got a cold floater game, right? You know what I'm saying? And if you prove to him you can do these things, you'll gain freedom within the system.
I like that quote you discussing Joe DiMaggio, and what was his name? Wally Pipp?
Wally Pipp.
Yeah, I find that interesting, man, because I played baseball from 12 all the way through high school. And then I used to collect cards, used to have the Beckett magazines, have jerseys, the posters. And, you if you play baseball long enough, you're going to do some history on the Yankees. Believe that. And I remember having, some old Negro League baseball books, on the history of the Negro Leagues and where they would play, the Negro League All-Stars and the American League or the National League, or whatever. And there's Joe DiMaggio is quoted as saying him just making contact off Satchel Paige, he knew he could play in Major League Baseball.
Right.
So he was struggling with something at the time, and he figured out a way to just make contact, and that gave him the confidence to move on. And you see how he's revered in baseball history.
Yeah.
So I think that, and it's funny, I've never heard of Wally Pipp ever.
But you know what, man? That's the difference in between players from out of our country and our kids today. And it's weird because when we were kids, you can almost say the Black Power movement was very important to athletics. And it was very important because we was going through adversity. We was going through an identity crisis, trying to show people who we are, trying to prove to people we're just as good as you. We're and somewhere along the way, as the generations went on, that edge, we don't have that edge no more. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of our kids, some of our kids are going through adversity still, trust me, in Florida and some of those destitute places, but they're, for the most part, in some places it's gotten a little bit better. And some of our kids ain't going through that adversity. Not every kid in Oakland, California is going through adversity. You know what I'm saying? Like I went through it when the drug culture was big and, unemployment was, you know what I'm saying? It's a different, there's different lifestyles in the Bay Area now.
So what you're saying is like, you grew up in the era where there was a lot of socioeconomic adversity, and
right.
That kind of spurred the athlete to think, feel, train, play a certain way to get up out of that environment in terms of using sports as a stepping stone, to further their life or get out of the predicament, even if it was just getting to college and getting an undergrad degree and maybe getting a master's and then being able to go into the workforce.
Right. If you hear a lot of that. You hear a lot of, I come from this and where I came from, it was this, and that's the adversity that they're going through. That's that. And don't get me wrong. You got some kids that don't go through adversity. Some kids that have it perfect and they just listen and they just do as they told and they get things done. You know what I'm saying? But that kid who's been through an adverse situation, I'll take him 100% over any other kid in the way he's made it, because he understands one thing, that things aren't going to always go your way.
Speaking of adversity, I know you took over a youth football team that for the last 2 seasons, they were 0-16. They hadn't won a single game. This was a seventh and 8th grade youth football team. And for all practical purposes, you're talking about 18 to 20 kids that come from affluent households. The other teams refer to them as little prep, rich kids, soft little sissies that you're coaching. I know you got laughed at. I know you turned the job down at first. And when you decided to take the job, people laughed at you.
Yeah.
And I know you've helped those kids overcome an extreme amount of adversity. What's going on with that team right now?
Oh man, because you come on.
I want to hear from you though.
No, man, you come along and you made this that much better of a journey. I was laughed at. People were, well, you're not hitting and you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I just said, you know what? It's about teaching. And I'm going to teach my kid their roles. And once they learn their roles, I'm going to teach them to perform them roles at an intense level. And I think what it was is the schedule was on our side, because they got a chance to implement exactly what I was saying, see it be successful, And in any situation that you or any endeavor you get into, if someone helps you and tells you, hey, do it this way, and you do it that way, and you're successful, you're going to be very comfortable with that person giving you even more input. So they became more and more comfortable with me giving them even more input when I would watch film and say, look, you did it, but if we fix this, this is what will happen. And along with the fact that I had some hidden talent in there, I had 3 or 4 kids that are 100-meter track stars. You know what I'm saying? So you take that and you give them an experience. Probably like my wife said, she said, this is the only experience these kids have probably had with a dominant black male of my nature. You know what I'm saying? This is probably their first and only experience. And then you come along. It's beautiful to see the dynamic. It's beautiful, man, to see. Sometimes I put myself outside of it and I look and I go, damn, there's not a brother on this team. and we're teaching. Now the travesty and the crime in that, we should be doing that in the hood. We should be doing that with kids at Jefferson. We should be doing that. Well, that's the only inner city we got, right? We should be doing that with kids at Grant. I'm talking about you and I. And the only person that can make a move like that would probably be the athletic director of the PIL. We'll see what happens if this makes enough noise to where they can say, you know, well, shit, look what they did with those kids. Let's see what they can do with these kids. You know what I'm saying? But that's why I took this on. I took this on as an experiment because I could prove it to you if I get an opportunity. And the opportunity is given, and that's what we're doing. We 9-0, and hopefully tomorrow, when we play Tiger, we 8-0. When we play Tiger, we'll be 9-0, and then we got the championship after that.
Yeah, you know, you also got a set of triplets on the team. Tell the audience about that.
Yeah, I got Malia, who's the tallest. We got Kama, who's the middle, and Pokey. Pokey, you guys are probably remember that nickname. Remember that name. Remember that name with us. That kid is going to be really special. And I'm gonna tell you why I say this. Whenever I see a kid that's undersized, that kid at birth and early on in his life is going through adversity. He's the smallest kid. He's sometimes the most weakest. He's not as far as strength wise, he's the weakest kid. And when I see a kid that's of that stature, and they always try to do the same thing that the bigger kid would do, and they're not afraid to be in situations that a bigger kid, a more muscle-bound kid would be. I kind of just really gravitate towards that because I know that quality will guarantee that at least at the worst, this kid is going to be a highly productive high school athlete.
Now, Leland, let me interrupt you. I want to put this in perspective because this set of triplets, there's 2 girls, and they're about 5'8" to 5'9" already. And the brother, he's like 5'5". He hasn't hit his growth spurt yet. So that's what we're talking about.
I was waiting on you to tell that part. I didn't want to blow it by saying, "Hey, I got 2 girls playing with me too."
Yeah, so one of the girls, y'all, she plays tight end and receiver, and then the other one, she plays DN. You know, and then Pokey, the little brother or the smaller brother, you know, out of all of the triplets, he plays cornerback and receiver. And I think once he hits his growth spurt, he's going to make a great cornerback in the long run.
Talent. And as far as Malia, for those who think that
they play basketball, right?
Yeah. We put Malia in situations where she's had to get physical with bigger, stronger boys. And honestly, through technique and leverage, I have it on film. I can show you where she's taking someone that was bigger and stronger than her, carried out her duty, and bang, and end up was like the seal block for a couple of long runs this year for us, like 30, 40-yard runs. So it ain't like we got out there cosmetically. We got out there doing her thing. And her sister is actually a pretty skilled kicker. And far as placing the ball in certain situations when we need a turnover or something like that, man, she can play too. And I heard she's a ferocious competitor in the game of basketball. So we're looking forward to working with all three of those kids in the off season in our core and hip mobility program that we're going to have.
Yeah, as we get in the fourth quarter, y'all, before we close out, there's another quote in here regarding fear of adversity. And I'm going to read this to y'all, and then we're going to discuss it. So Travis, he goes on to explain, to learn resilience, children must be exposed to hardship. If they don't meet hardship early, they'll certainly find it later. And if they haven't built a habit of resilience and earned some self-respect by then, the adult pain they meet probably won't strengthen them. It will likely overwhelm them. You know how a vaccine works. We build a healthy immune system not by staying clear of germs and pathogens, but by exposing ourselves to them. A vaccine, usually a small, weakened form of a virus, allows our immune system to build the resistance that inoculates us for when we meet the virus full force. Without the benefit of a vaccine in childhood, a virus can kill us when we're adults. Protecting children from all suffering is, in fact, one of the only ways to ensure that they will be overwhelmed and badly hurt one day. They will have none of the resources, the experiences, the spiritual reserves of courage and fortitude necessary to make it through future difficulties. You wouldn't want that for your kids, and I don't want them for mine. So I can definitely echo those sentiments. We've been talking about adversity here. This is the book club. We're talking about Travis Daugherty's book, The Lens, LENS, and subtitle, Raising a Champion Athlete and Man in Today's World. For me, I just call it Raising a Champion Student Athlete in Today's Myopic World. So as we close out, Leland, did you have anything further that you'd like to share with our audience today on adversity or overcoming hardship?
Yeah. Even though we work and we work to create a better life for our kids, what we have to realize is not everything in our life that we went through that we may have thought it was unfortunate was bad. It was some good in it. And if you understand that, then what you'll do for your son is you'll create situations, or you'll create adverse situations for your daughter or your son. And it's better that you create those situations, that you sit back and, watch them compete against an older kid, and watch the older kid, for the most part, take their ass to the ringer. Let that happen. Let them see what would happen if they play against someone that's better than them, that don't have any interest in whether they're going to be good or bad or whatever, just a competitor. Let them go through that. That creates a conversation piece for you and him. You start to understand more about your kid. Your kid also starts to understand a lot about you. And you probably will start to talk about some things that bothered you in childhood and continue to affect you as an adult. And so it'll open your mind to some therapy and open you to some therapy also. But the most beautiful thing is you'll gain a connection with your child. Like the richest thing I have in this world, Deshaun, and you talk about, being successful and doing things in this this thing that we've developed here, I can't help but think this. If today someone dropped $10 million in my lap, the most valuable thing I would have in my life would be my relationship that I developed with my son, because I always wanted to have that relationship with my dad. And, you know, whether he was too busy or whatever it was, we didn't have that. So I always wondered, I said, man, the show I always used to watch, and I'm going to date myself when I say this, when I was a kid, was The Courtship of Eddie's Father. And if you can Google that, it was about this white dad and this actor named Bill Bixby, and he had this little son. And the mom I think she passed away when he was young, and it was just talking about the relationship between father and son. And that's something I always wanted to have. And through sports and through creating adverse situations for my son, and through educating myself in the process so that I was prepared to know about these teachable moments, it's given me a great relationship with my son. That's the most valuable thing to me in this world, you know, and I may be, you know, just really just passionate about it or over passionate about it. But, you know, I think you should spend your life trying to find some passion, you know, and find something that's passionate to you, so you know what that feeling is. So I know what it feels like. You know, he's brought me complete joy.
The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the parent to work through together. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the coach to work through together. It was created in a sense and in a way to bridge the gap in communication between these parties and build a successful relationship dynamic. To learn more, visit sportsmastery.com/workbook or check out the show notes page and click on the link.